So let's talk about the cash flow of the rich and the poor. Now, cash flow as a term basically means the flow of money. You've got money that comes into your bank account, you've got money that goes out of your bank account. Income, expenses, and as that money flows and moves, that's how we can then call it cash flow. Now, if we're looking at an example of cash flow between the rich and the poor, here's an example of a rich versus a poor person. On the left, we've got a lady, let's just call her Trisha, and on the right, we've got Michelle. Now, on the left, we've got someone who's in a cash flow positive position, and someone on the right who's got a cash flow negative position. Now, cash flow positive means that our lady on the left is earning more than she's spending. There's more flowing into her bank account than there's flowing out of her bank account. Versus Michelle, there's more flowing out of her bank account than coming in. So on the left-hand side, Trisha is earning, let's say, a 30,000 Rand salary. Her expenses all in are 25. She's left with a 5,000 Rand cash flow or profit. Michelle, on the other hand, earns the same amount as Trisha, but tends to spend a little bit more, and thus is left with a 5,000 Rand deficit. Now, where I see a lot of people getting stuck, especially with property investing, is they're not in a cash flow positive position, which means they cannot access financing from the banks. Because the bank's going to look at this and say, you've got more outflows than you've got inflows, which means you cannot afford our financing. You can't afford to pay our bond, so we're not going to loan to you. So before you can even start in the property game, you need to make sure you're in a cash flow positive position, like our lady on the left here, Trisha, is. Where Michelle's going wrong is not only is she not getting any affordability with the bank, she's also spending more than she earns, which means she's living off credit card debt, because that's the only way that you can sustain that, and that's a very expensive form of leverage. This is also a great metaphor for how you must look at property. We want to avoid the properties that have got the Michelle view. We want the Trisha type properties, which basically means that the rental that the property is generating must exceed all of the expenses. You're left with a profit at the end of the month. If you're left with a negative cash flow, like in Michelle's case, you don't have a property asset, you've got a property liability. Buying a new build, for instance, is a property liability because 9 times out of 10, the rental maybe covers the bond, but then you've got rates and taxes, levies, insurance, provisions, etc., and you're actually worse off every month. So 2 lessons from this one. 1, find property investments that are cash flow positive from day one. That's my philosophy, and that's what I recommend you do. And number 2, run your personal life like a business. You need to learn to run your life like Trisha, have that positive cash flow at the end of the month. Not only can you save, but you can also approach the banks for affordability. Now, if we look at a cash flow statement, there are 2 big things. You've got your income statement, you've got your balance sheet. Your income statement is essentially how you survive on a month-to-month basis. You've got income, you've got expenses, you've got a salary, and you've got your groceries, your house repayments, etc. Then you've got your balance sheet, which is where your wealth sits. That's where you've got assets and liability and essentially your equity. Now, if we look at the cash flow statement of the poor, the middle class, and the wealthy, you'll see a very, very interesting trend. And now, while I'm going through these slides, just ask yourself, which one do I fit into? Now, the cash flow statement of someone in the poor category is someone who earns an uncertain or irregular income stream. That income stream goes towards paying off expenses, and there's usually nothing, if anything, left over at the end of the month. And they have no real allocation or any kind of asset or liability. They don't have actual wealth. Your wealth is sitting in your balance sheet. Your monthly survivability is sitting in your income statement. So someone with an uncertain or irregular income statement where all their income goes towards paying expenses and has no balance sheet, that's someone who's got a poor cash flow. If we look at the middle income, now this is where most people in South Africa sit. This is where you've got one steady income stream, be it a salary or commission earner or whatnot. And that income goes towards paying your liabilities as well as your expenses. So the income comes in, the salary comes in, and the person pays off their house, the house that they live in, which is a liability because it's not generating rental. And then they pay for groceries, school fees, whatever it is. And at the end of the month, they may be left with a bit of money, and that money can be used, or often is used, for luxury and lifestyle. But they don't necessarily have many assets. Other than maybe the property that they live in, they don't actually have a lot of wealth on their balance sheet. If we look at a wealthy person's statement, there's some key things here. Number one, multiple streams of income. Now, guys, why I love property and why I hope you love property as well is not only is it passive, but you can multiply it. You can have a block of flats, buy 5 units. Dominic is looking at a property in Rosettenville now, which is a block of 5 units. He's buying 5 income streams with one purchase. You know, if one of those tenants doesn't pay, he's still got 4 people paying him. So multiple streams of income is important. Now, that income goes towards purchasing assets. You can see the line here from income goes towards your asset column. So what the wealthy people do is they use their income first and foremost to pay themselves, to buy their assets that will generate more wealth. The assets then in turn pay the liabilities. Here you can see the line goes towards there. Now what that means is that the rental, the tenant is paying off the bond, not you. If you buy a flat for 200 grand and the rent is 6,000, that 6,000 is going to cover your bond repayments. It's going to cover all the expenses. So you're not paying the bond off. Your tenant is paying the bond off for you. So income comes towards buying assets. Assets pay the liabilities, and then whatever's left over pays the expenses. And then again, any additional profits gets reinvested back into the asset column. The whole idea of a wealthy person's statement is they're using their income stream to build their balance sheet, because of the big balance sheet is when you've got wealth. Okay, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the cash flow of the rich and poor. So the poor person, irregular income statement with no balance sheet. The middle class is someone with a steady salary and maybe has one asset, one liability, maybe the property that they live in. Wealthy people, multiple streams of income and a balance sheet that keeps on evolving. Are you tired of having more month at the end of your money? It's time to venture into property investing. And although it may seem scary, don't worry. We've created tons of resources to help you get started. From tools that help you analyze deals, to online training courses, to one-on-one specialized coaching. Click the link in the comments below and get started today.